With James Gunn's Superman coming out, kicking off a whole new cinematic universe in the DCU, I'm going back and reviewing all of the theatrically released Superman films. Hi, my name's Zach, and today we are talking about the very first Superman movie, not starring Christopher Reeve, but starring George REEVES. What are the odds of that? Superman and the Mole Men. Like many of you, I started this YouTube channel because I cannot watch a movie without needing to talk about it afterwards. If that sounds like you, you're in the right place. Consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, while I'm talking, be sure to leave your comments down below in the comments section. I want to hear your thoughts on Superman and the Mole Men. Do you even know about this thing? Have you seen it? Were you there for it when it first premiered back in 1951? Comment down below. I'd love to hear your story. And as it goes with this, as I'm sure not everybody is familiar with Superman and the Mole Men. In fact, it's something that I only recently found out about. Superman and the Mole Men is basically the promotional pilot that they put into theaters for the 1950s Superman TV series that later went on to premiere. It ran for like 6 seasons, also starring George REEVES, who is Superman in this film. It only runs at 58 minutes long, and it doesn't take place in Metropolis. It's got very little associated with the Superman that we think of today within it. This is a story of Superman, Clark Kent, and Lois Lane going off to write a story about the deepest well ever dug in this little town in Texas called Silsbee. Turns out they dug so deep they hit the hollow center of the earth. Mole Men came out from underneath it. Now an angry mob of the small town is going on a manhunt to kill the Mole Men, and Superman is trying to stand in the way of that happening. And that is basically the story of this film. So obviously taking place in 1951, you got to be a little bit gracious towards it. You got to remember the time, the product of the time that it was. You also got to remember the low budget that it has. You have to remember this is not Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers did not purchase Superman until into the 60s. This is a company called Lippert Pictures. They made this in 12 days on the back of a studio lot and put it out the same year that it was made. So, with all that said, going into Superman and the Mole Men, let's talk about what works about Superman and the Mole Men. And the thing that stood out to me while watching this film is this is obviously taking place in the time where the B monster creature feature movies were running rampant in the theater at the time. So this plays very much like one of those old B movie creature feature type films with the Mole Men, just inserting Superman into the film. And in that way, that kind of mold actually works really well for this type of story, where you've got the stereotypical tropes going on here with the townspeople being terrorized by these unknown creatures that came from another world, and they're terrified and they want to kill them. And then you've got George Reeves' Superman here trying to stop that from happening, actually trying to save the Mole Men, which there's a reason why this film is not called Superman versus the Mole Men. Superman is very sympathetic towards the Mole Men throughout this entire movie. His whole objective, his whole goal is to prevent the townspeople from killing or harming these creatures. And one of the things I liked about that in the story, they start off the movie with a very brief 30-second recap of where Superman came from, what happened to Krypton, how he disguised himself as Clark Kent during the day, but he leads a double life as Superman.
The sole survivor was an infant boy who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men.
When you have that in this film where Superman is also not of this world, he is a separate creature from humans, his sympathy towards the Mole Men makes a lot of sense. And for the time that this came out, George REEVES is actually a pretty good Superman, where he holds that confidence and that moral standard. He lectures the people in here about being prejudiced, about how their treatment of the Mole Men just because they're different is not right. And it's very surface level, it's very simple lessons, but
it's men like you that make it difficult for people to understand one another.
You're not going to shoot those little creatures.
But you have to remember also at the time who this was aimed for, and this is aimed for children. This is aimed for those young ones who are going to grow up with George REEVES on the screen at home, watching him for the 6 seasons of the television show. And for little kids of that time, and honestly even for today, George Reeves' Superman is a very honorable role model to follow. And in this film as well, again, the limitations that they have, the Superman sequences that they incorporate into this movie, while, very dated for the time, they're actually not as bad as I was expecting them to be. There's multiple times in this where he does hang on wires. George Reeves jumps up, and they do have a moment where he is clearly gliding through the air. It honestly doesn't look that bad. There's also some times where they take the Jaws approach, before obviously Jaws came out, where they don't show Superman flying. They more so insinuate to you, the audience, that he is flying by putting you in his perspective. There's the shot where he takes off, and then we follow the road from the air as he's gaining speed and passing the angry mob going to kill the mole men. It's a very simple shot, but at the same time, for the time that this is made and for the budget that they had for this, it's a pretty effective shot as well. Likewise, the effects that they have here to show off Superman's powers against the angry mob, when they're shooting guns at him and the bullets are bouncing off of him, or when they're trying to fight him and their hands break. There's a couple sloppy moments for sure where one of the townspeople tries to punch Superman in the face. His fist clearly misses. But when it comes to demonstrating just the powerful being, the invulnerable being that Superman is, for the times of the 1950s, I think these effects hold up pretty decently well. The movie's also pretty efficient. It's pretty tight in the storytelling. It's not particularly that engaging of a story, but for a 58-minute runtime, you get the gist. It goes by pretty fast, and Superman does pop up by the 30-minute mark, so you're not waiting around all too much for Superman, as halfway through the first half you get Clark Kent and Lois Lane coming into this town, investigating the mole men, kind of seeing what's going on with this well, and then the second half of the film you get Superman doing his Superman thing to help protect the mole men. So it is pretty economically made storytelling for a film that is this short. With that said, though, let's talk about what doesn't work about Superman and the Mole Men. And I think the most evident and obvious thing about this film is it doesn't feel like a film. Again, it was shot in 12 days on the back of a studio lot. It was also a promotional kind of push to get people to watch the TV series that would be coming out. So in a lot of ways, this is the pilot for the first episode. And actually, they turned this into a two-parter finale for season 1 later on, with an episode called The Unknown People Part 1 and Part 2. And you feel that. You feel the limited scope. You feel the limitations when it comes to the budget with what they have to work with to make this. A lot of it just feels like they kind of went into the woods and just shot some scenes of some mole men running around. Also, the mole men in this film, I think even for the 1950s, they are very cheap. They do not look very good. There are definitely a lot of problems with the costuming department with this one, where their design is, they're supposed to be these hairy men with these hairy bodies and arms and legs, and they've got these clear bald caps on that look horrible. They got little people to play the mole men. They're clearly just wearing these kind of furry suits. There's even some sequences where when they go behind, the camera goes behind the mole men, you can basically see the zippers coming up their suits. It really doesn't look very good at all. Again, the story here feels like it's for television in that way. 58 minutes, while being efficient, while I did feel it went by decently well, there's definitely a lot of chase sequences, especially between the mob and the mole people, that could have been trimmed down, could have been cut down a little bit more. And like I was saying before, the effects, for the time, you have to take into effect, and some of them do, I think, seeing how this is over 70 years old, do hold up decently well. There are also some that look really bad. Not just the mole men costumes, but like there's an animated Superman swooping down to save one of the mole men at the time, and when he catches him, it's clearly a dummy with this guy on a wire coming down with a backdrop behind him. It just doesn't look very good at all. And there's just a lot of dated aspects to this film that just don't hold my attention all that much in the year 2025. And I'm sure it was very exciting, and I was trying to put myself in the mindset of watching this in 1950 when watching George Reeves' interpretation of this character, thinking about the time that this is, post World War II, the Cold War era is kind of going on. So putting yourself in that mindset, there's also a couple thematic themes that you can pick up on during this film that would relate to people other. I mean, Superman calls the angry mob in this Nazis at one point.
Now I'm going to give you one last chance to stop acting like Nazi stormtroopers.
So there's definitely a clear of the times with the dialogue going on here at times. But at the same time, it's not a particularly thrilling story. It's not a particularly interesting investigation. The science here is very loose with the world being hollow and how the whole Milne people come out of it, how they get involved in the story. It's not very good by today's standards, for sure. But with that said, you again have to take it as a product of its time, and also consideration that it's basically a TV episode. And as a TV episode for a show from the 1950s, I honestly think that the Superman aspect of it wasn't honestly that bad. It held up. The biggest thing that dates this is the effects, is kind of the science fiction storytelling that was going on with the creature features at the time, where there are a lot of tropes in this that you'll find in B movies of that era as well. But if you're looking for a B movie from the 50s that has a Superman in it, it's not the worst thing you could watch, but other than the fact that it's a Superman product from the time of the 50s, of a different era, it's part of Superman history on the big screen, that if you're a Superman fan, it's kind of interesting to go back and experience what was the very first incarnation on the big screen for Superman. Other than that, it's not really a film that I think you need to watch. A lot of it's taken very seriously. There's definitely some campy and corny moments, but for the most part, this is taking itself to be a pretty serious science fiction B-type film. So you can have fun with it in the right mindset. I'll give it a weak not recommend. If you're not interested in it, don't watch it. If anything I said in here kind of piqued your curiosity, it's worth a check out. So take with that what you will. If you like content like this, I got more DC content right over there. If you want to jump to the other side of the fence, I got some Marvel content right there. That's the most recently uploaded video to the channel. And thank you, as always, guys, for watching. Subscribe if you haven't. We'd love to have you join us. We talk about movies on here all the time. And we will be talking about Superman, the movie, starring Christopher Reeve, very soon. As always, guys, don't just watch movies, talk movies. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.